boys and girls, back with another read aloud. Really quick, I just wanted to take time to acknowledge your work on your Venn diagrams that you made yesterday. I am so impressed with the great work you all have been doing, not only with just this Venn diagram, but with everything that we've been doing so far, especially with our Wishtree read aloud. I know everything must be very tough, trying to learn and work at home instead of school. I know that I've been struggling a lot. I can't seem to find a quiet place in my house to record, which is why I keep recording in this one room, because it's just so noisy and I can't get away from my family. So I bet you all are feeling pretty much the same right now. So keep up the great work. Really proud of you guys. You're doing great. Keep going. Now, in yesterday's chapters that we read, we learned a lot more about Red's history and her relationship with Francesca, and the history dating back to almost the 1800s. And we were introduced to a new character, Maeve, who turns out to be Francesca's great-grandmother, or once removed, or something like that. Now, mind you, in those chapters that we read, when Red was giving us a little background history, that was all Red talking to Stephen and Samar, like 7 chapters worth. So she talked a lot. So now in these next chapters that we're going to read, we are going to see Stephen and Samar's reaction and Red's reaction and her feelings towards her choice that she made, and her decision on speaking out and telling her story. Chapter 39. At long last, I stopped talking. Once the words had spilled out, it was like trying to stop the wind. In the silence that followed, it felt as if the whole world was holding its breath. I'd broken the rule. Stephen and Samar still stared open-mouthed at me. They looked as rooted to the ground as neither had uttered a sound while I'd told my story. The front door to Stephen's house opened. "Stephen," called his father. "What the heck are you doing, young man?" Stephen leapt to his feet. Here I come, Dad. Night, Samar?" "Night, Stephen," she said. Stephen dashed toward the porch, but stopped halfway. He spun around to look at me. "Thanks?" he said in a quizzical voice, using the same tone he might have used if Bongo had just made him pancakes. The door slammed behind him. Samar stood, holding her blanket to her chest. "I know I must be dreaming," she said. She headed to her own porch and eased open the door. "I just wish," she added with a smile, "that I didn't have to." Chapter 40. Almost instantly, I regretted what I'd done. I'd broken the rule, the biggie. I'd deliberately spoken to people, and not just a few words. I'd spoken a river of words. I wasn't like that frog in the mailbox. I hadn't broken the rule accidentally. I'd broken the rule because I wanted something. I wanted to matter. I wanted to do something meaningful before I died. I'd done it for myself. After the shocked babies and their equally shocked parents were safely ensconced in their dens, I admitted my feelings to Bongo. Ensconced means to settle in somewhere. I waited for her to yell at me. Bongo was good at yelling. Extremely good. You might even say she has a gift. "Why did I do it, Bongo?" I murmured. "Why?" She flew to the home plate. She stroked my rough bark with her sleek hand. "You did it, my wise old tree, because you had a story to tell." "It was foolish," I said. "I'm not supposed to be foolish." "Not so foolish," Bongo said. "Just hopeful. And everyone needs to hope, Red. Even wise old trees." So Red is feeling very regretful about her decision to come out and speak to Stephen and Samar. She tries to justify her reasoning she tries to justify her choice by saying how she wanted to matter and she wanted to do something before she died, which is understandable. You want to do one last good deed before you're gone, and I think that's a very sweet sentiment that she had. And at the end here, when Bongo and Red are talking, We kind of see the tables turn a little bit. Usually, Red is known for being more of an optimist. However, Bongo is comforting Red, and she's telling her that she's not foolish, she's just being hopeful, which is the conversation they actually had earlier in the book, where Red says how people who put the wishes on the tree are just hopeful. And now the tables have turned a little bit. We see another side to Bongo and how now she's becoming a little bit more of an optimist, just to comfort Red. Chapter 41. Morning emerged slowly, heavy with clouds. A light rain had fallen just before dawn, soothing my leaves, if not my mood. Oddly, the ground felt saturated. Spring was always muddy, of course, but this was unusual. It would make for a messy wishing day tomorrow. An early rising old gentleman with a bamboo cane approached. He paused to attach a small piece of blue paper to my lowest branch, using a bit of twine. He didn't say his wish aloud, so I couldn't tell what it was, but he had a satisfied smile as he stepped carefully through the soggy grass. No doubt I'd be seeing more wishes today. Many people came early to grab an easy-to-reach spot. This would probably be my last wishing day. How could it be that my first one, that long ago day with Maeve, still seemed as fresh in my heart as my conversation with Stephen and Samar from the previous night? A car slowed to a crawl near the curb. I saw an arm, a blur, and then splat. Something hit my trunk. Splat, splat. 2 more times, and the car roared off with a screech of tires. Bongo was the first to report on the damage. Raw eggs, she said. I'm assuming that didn't hurt? Didn't feel a thing, I said. Fresh baked bread, hairy spiders, and Big U ventured out to inspect the situation. Big U slipped under the police tape and licked one of the yolks sliding down my trunk. She murmured. Raw. Just the way I like 'em. Hey, Big, share the wealth. Hairy spiders snapped as she and Fresh joined her. Agnes watched from her perch. I'd much prefer a squirming mouse pup, she said. It's all yours, ladies. What a nice surprise, Big U said between slurps. This is not nice, Bongo said. This is people at their worst. Still, said Hairy Spiders, licking her paws, it'd be a shame to let perfectly good egg goo go to waste. One creature's nastiness is another creature's nibble. Big U gave a satisfied burp, and the animals scampered back to their homes. The door to Stephen's house opened. He walked over to me, saw the eggshells scattered like puzzle pieces, and scowled. Samar was next, a backpack slung over her shoulder, and books clutched to her chest. She leaped over a muddy puddle and joined Stephen. Jerks, he muttered, gesturing toward the egg remains. Sorry, Samar. But Samar held up her hand. Stephen, she said, in a low voice. Last night? Stephen nodded ever so slightly, his eyes locked on me. Last night, he repeated, as if they were speaking in code. The tree. The tree. You heard what I heard? Samar asked. I did. Samar looked right at Stephen. You heard the tree? I heard the tree. Samar gave a little nod. So it was maybe a trick? Somebody playing a joke on us? Or maybe we were both sleepwalking at the same moment? Stephen suggested. He nodded, as if trying to convince himself. Yeah, sleepwalking. Have you ever sleepwalked before? No, but there's a first time for everything. They stood there, looking at me expectantly, willing me to speak. At least that's how it felt. I stayed silent. I'd said my piece, and I regretted it. Stephen, Samar said softly, whatever happens, we can't tell a soul about this. Deal? Deal. Ever. Ever. Samar sighed. People would say we were crazy, and they'd probably be right, said Stephen. Samar jutted her chin at me. Tree, do you have anything to add? I didn't say a word. Samar and Stephen shared a smile. Figured it was worth a shot, she said. They headed off to school together. Stephen's father came out onto the porch. He was holding a cup of coffee. He caught sight of Stephen and Samar and frowned. A moment later, Samar's mother stepped out of the blue house, her keys jangling a briefcase over her shoulder. She followed her neighbor's gaze. Both parents watched in silence until Stephen and Samar, walking side by side, disappeared from view. So now we're starting to see Stephen and Samar's relationship start to form. They're building more connection. They're having more conversation. They are now bonding over what they witnessed a couple chapters ago with Red talking. And they're bonding over that. And their relationship is now growing in the book, their friendship. Chapter 42. I didn't have much time to mull over my mistake. We had a steady stream of visitors as the hours passed. Early wish makers came throughout the day. A little girl who wanted 20 hamsters. The grocer down the street, hoping for a summer of sweet peaches. The usual. The local reporter returned. She peeked at some of the new wishes hanging from my bows and took a photo of the broken eggshells on my trunk. Sandy and Max came to remove the police tape surrounding me. Francesca joined them. Today she had Lewis and Clark on thin leather leashes. Each cat was wearing an embarrassingly sparkly harness. Francesca discussed the broken eggs with Sandy and Max, while Lewis and Clark wove around her legs. I've got a tree cutter coming out later to give me an estimate, Francesca said. So you're definitely cutting it down? Sandy asked, in what I like to think was a disappointed voice. Yep, no question. See that muck? All the water in the yard? Francesca pointed at the soggy lawn. Plumber told me this dang tree is plugging up some of the pipes. Least bit of rain and the yard turns into a giant mud puddle. Still, people are going to be sorry to see it go, Max said. He reached for Clark's leash and tried to unwrap Francesca. I know, it's a good old tree, but sentiment doesn't play the plumber. Sandy grabbed Lewis while Francesca attempted to unknot herself from the leashes. What about the animals and birds that live in the tree? She asked. That's where I'm using the old noggin, Francesca said. Every year, the possums and owls and such vacate the premises on wishing day. Strangest thing, it's like they know it's coming. She hopped over the web of leashes. Suppose they don't like being disturbed. In any case, I'm hoping the cutters will come late tomorrow afternoon. Most of the wishing will be done by then. What will you do with all the wishes? Sandy asked. Put them in the trash when no one's looking? That's what I do every year. Whole thing's nonsense anyway. Max and Sandy looked at me sympathetically. I know. I don't have a sentimental bone in my body. Francesca paused to address the cats who were yanking her in opposite directions. If dogs can do this, why is it such a challenge for you two? She turned her attention back to the police. But it's time. More than time. Well, we're going to swing by tomorrow. Keep an eye on things. No lead on the person who carved that word. But with the eggs and people just generally riled and the cut down? Sandy shrugged. Couldn't hurt to have us keep an eye on things. Thanks, Francesca said. Not necessary, but I appreciate it. Lewis and Clark caught a glimpse of Bongo and lunged for my trunk. Whoa, you crazy felines, Francesca cried, raining. They hissed at Bongo. She spread her wings menacingly and let out her most ferocious caw. Lewis and Clark retreated for the safety of Francesca's arms. Once again, she was a tangled knot of leashes and cats. Sandy smiled. Maybe leave the cats home tomorrow, Francesca. In this chapter, we read Francesca's conversation with the police about how she is going to be cutting Red down, and she seems to be very serious about it, of course. I think Red didn't know to the extent how serious Francesca is, but now I think it's really going to set into Red that she's going to be cut down, and especially because in this chapter, we find out that Francesca is planning to do it on Wishing Day, May Day, which is coming up pretty soon. So this could be very frightening for Red. And to me, it's shocking that Francesca would want to do such a thing, given the history of Red with her family and with Maeve, which we just read about in yesterday's Read Aloud. So I'm surprised that Francesca is feeling this way about a tree just because of the fact that it's messing with the plumbing or whatever reason she gave. So I wonder if she knows about the history or maybe she's just forgetting. I don't know. Okay, so that was it for today's read aloud. We will continue with some more chapters tomorrow, and happy reading.